There is one word in the entertainment industry that causes chills, terror, and cold sweats. Adaptation. No, I'm not talking about the Nicolas Cage movie. We're talking about when a studio exec decides that it's time to take a beloved book, theater production, movie, game, or even theme park ride and turn it into something else. Usually a movie. And you know who loves doing this more than anybody else? Disney. In the last 10 or so years, we've seen this growing trend of Disney taking their original animated films and reimagining them as Broadway musicals and live-action movies. Or, in the case of a certain movie I won't mention, still animated but just weirdly more realistic looking. Why? Sometimes these adaptations work, sometimes they're less successful, but they always create strong opinions and a fair amount of controversy. But are they better than the original material? Could they be better than the original material? Will nostalgia let them be better than the original material? How do they improve upon the original or fail it? That's what I'm here to figure out. My strategy is pretty simple. I'm going to try and make this very subjective undertaking a little more objective by using a standard rubric across all movies and all adaptations. Each version will be given a score from 1 to 5 for each character of my choosing for different categories. Why break it down by character? Well, to me, a story is made or broken by its characters. If I don't care about them, I'm not as likely to care about the movie. I also think it gives a good indication of changes implemented and will hopefully avoid playing favorites. The categories they will each be rated on are songs, story, personality, and character development. Whenever possible, I'll try to make each showdown into one video, but in cases where there are just too many adaptations and things to cover, we'll split it up by character. At the end of each video, we'll compare the character scores across all versions. And I'll link the relevant videos in the description box as they're posted. After all of the versions are analyzed and scored, we'll compare the totals and declare the winner, and then potentially be really disappointed in the result. Oh, and since there are sometimes aspects of an adaptation that don't really fit any of the categories or characters, but really add, detract, or confuse from the final product, we'll have a last minute, but wait, there's more category if needed. Now, before we begin, there's one more thing I want to consider. What makes a good adaptation? Now, to me, this is pretty simple. Does it add value? If I'm just watching the exact same film in a different style, then I'm going to be a little disappointed. I used to be a major purist about these things when I was younger, like, how dare they leave out this super important subplot of Winky the Elf in this movie that is already 2 hours and 37 minutes long? And yeah, Winky's subplot, super important. In the book. In the movie, just too much. And too many house elves.
Hello!
Then I read something that changed my perspective. Ian McKellen's blog. That's right. Gandalf was actually one of the first people to write down his thoughts for strangers on the internet. Who knew? In one of his entries, he mentioned some negativity the X-Men movie was getting over Magneto's costume. He brought up that what works on the page doesn't always work on the screen, and so there are obviously going to be changes. And there should be. He also mentions, in a slightly less nice way, that there's always more than one way to tell a story. So, with all that cleared up, let's start with our first contestant in our Adaptation Showdown, Aladdin. Let's start with Aladdin, our hero. The first adaptation we'll cover will be our baseline, the animated version. Released in 1992 and directed by Ron Clements and John Musker. Animated Al was voiced by everybody's favorite Full House boyfriend, Scott Weiner, sung by Brad Kane, and brought to life by Disney legend Glenn Keane. Aladdin has 2 songs in the movie. 2.5 if you count the reprise, which I just thought he had more. I don't know why. We're introduced to the character in the song One Jump, and I am so all for introducing a character in this way. A song is pretty much an inner monologue, essentially, so it's a fantastic way to really see how the character thinks and sees the world. This song is snappy and fun, and it has great energy and timing.
You're only in trouble if you get caught. Gotcha! I'm in trouble.
Aladdin's upbeat, charming, sarcastic, and a little bit manic. There's a lot of manic energy in this movie. They're just throwing sheep. I love it. We get the sense that while the danger is very real to him, he also kind of thrives on it. I mean, look at that face. That is the face of someone who's enjoying this. The reprise shows a different side to the character. It's short, but it's pretty impactful. The way it's done emphasizes Aladdin's loneliness, his compassion, and just the frustration he feels at his station in life. I don't know why, but there's something about that little eye squint that I feel just says so much about his character. And that's all in under 1 minute. Finally, we hit a whole new world. The ultimate romantic Disney ballad.
You don't want to go for a ride, do you? We could get out of the palace, see the world.
It's charming and so freaking wholesome. You can just tell they're falling in love. It sounds so cheesy, but it's so true. Even just the physicality from the beginning of song to the end of the song. Also, did anyone else do this with like bubbles in the bath when they were a kid? Nope. Just me. Cool. So Aladdin songs get an overall rating of 3 for me. The songs he does have are great and they're sung really well. Brad Kane has a beautiful voice.
Shining, shimmering, splendid.
But for a main character, we don't get a lot from him.
There's so much more to me.
I mean, the movie's called Aladdin. It's about Aladdin. Do we get a huge amount of backstory in this version? Not really. But we do come to understand the character. We know what he wants, we see the good and the ugly side of him, and we get a pretty good snapshot of who he is as a person without needing a bunch of exposition. Also, he's given a great variety of emotional and comedic moments throughout the movie. He gets a 5. I love this Aladdin. When I rewatched this version, I was actually surprised at how much I really liked this character. He's so freaking charming. The character is well written, but the performances by Glenn Keane, Brad Kane, and Scott Wagner complement each other beautifully. Keane is a master of body language and facial expressions, and the way he animates Aladdin's movements particularly highlight the innocence of the character. He always seems just a little too sincere, on the edge of shy. It makes the moments when he's putting on that princely bluster a little more noticeable. When he's in control of the situation, his movements are fluid and open. But when he feels uncertain or threatened, Aladdin always seems to revert to a slightly hunched over position, pulling his shoulders in and making himself seem smaller. When he's putting on confidence, he tends to jut his chin up and kind of puff his chest out forward. This is a great choice because when we do this, it signals that we want to appear tough, sticking our jaw out, while still protecting ourselves by maintaining physical distance. Weiner and Kane also deliver on that wide-eyed sweetness that's at the base of Aladdin. He's smart and has a sharp wit, but he's also just a young man who's trying to figure out his place in the world and navigating his first love. It all comes together beautifully to give animated Aladdin a 5 out of 5 personality. Even when he's being a royal douche, you can't hate him. And that is a great thing for this character. I think there's actually a lot of development in our animated Al. He grows up as the movie goes on. He starts out as naive and overly confident in that way that you know his self-esteem is not great. Through meeting the genie and Jasmine, he learns that what matters isn't what you have or how you're seen by other people, but how you treat people. If you respect yourself, you earn the respect of others. He learns he's good enough as he is, and that riches and accolades don't mean anything if you step on your friends to get them. It's a big lesson, and he takes it to heart. While he begins and ends the same lovable Aladdin, there's a maturity at the end of the movie that was hard-won through the events that took place. 5 out of 5, Al. Well done.
No matter what anybody says, you'll always be a prince to me.
Next up, it's time to tackle the 2019 live-action Aladdin, directed by Guy Ritchie. Yes, you heard that right. The man best known for R-rated movies set in the UK. I know I can't have been alone in just waiting for Vinnie Jones or Jason Statham to show up in this movie. Spoiler alert, they don't. Live action Al was played by Egyptian-Canadian actor Mina Massoud. Let me start off all of this by saying that I genuinely think that Mina Massoud is a talented actor.
Yes, here we are.
Okay, now that that's out of the way, this movie does not showcase his singing skills well. He's technically sound, the notes are hit, the timing is there, but there's just no soul to it. It's so clinical. One Jump was a frickin' travesty in this film. There, I said it. It should have worked. You have a very physical actor playing Aladdin. You have a Disney budget. You have Mr. Action Man directing. So why did it feel so blah? There's just no energy to it.
Rap, street rap, scoundrel. Take that. Try a different tack, guys.
We then get 2 reprises of One Jump, and they're both okay. I'm personally not really a fan of Massoud's talk singing here.
Riff raff. Street rat.
He has a lovely singing voice.
Even if she walks away.
And the weird emphatic talk singing sticks out like a sore thumb.
From me.
I do like the inclusion of the second reprise. It's a good bridge in the story, and it's a nice character moment to see Aladdin back in his old home, dressed as Ali. As far as A Whole New World goes, it's also okay. The animated version is smooth and sweet.
Whole new world, a dazzling place I never knew.
This one plays like a pop song.
A whole new world, a dazzling place I never knew.
And while it sounds good, it lacks the charm. This version is also comprised of way more wide shots. I'm assuming to show off the CGI, but this switch from mostly close-ups takes away the intimacy of the song. The characters are barely even shown looking at each other. And these choices change the song from a romantic love ballad to a powerhouse musical number. And I think that actually takes away from the point of it. 3 out of 5. You just didn't charm me. The movie is still called Aladdin. It's still about Aladdin. Again, there's not as much backstory as there perhaps could be. Why Proud of Your Boy wasn't incorporated, I'm not sure. But we still get a well-rounded look at Aladdin. We see a bit more detail about his life in Agrabah and how he survives. They've highlighted and intensified his pickpocket sleight of hand skills. And most importantly, we get a bit of a deeper look at how he feels about who he is. He brings up a few times how he's not that guy. Live-action Aladdin seemingly understands that there's a risk of power corrupting people. Does that understanding save him?
No, of course not.
But he's a little less naive than animated Aladdin was. All in all, I'll give him a 5 out of 5. If I have one major complaint about live-action Aladdin, it's that he can come across so casual he's almost bro-y. The entire first part of the film, Aladdin feels way too modern for the movie. From his speech patterns to his physical movement, it just doesn't seem like he's in a fantasy epic musical. There's a lot of shoulder shrugging, and he's so calm about everything, it feels like there's no real stakes. It improves a little bit when he infiltrates the palace, but I feel like the first wish the genie granted in that Cave of Wonders was giving Al a personality. Once he meets the genie, it's like night and day. Massoud is a fantastic comedic actor. His comedy scenes truly set him apart, and his take on awkward Ali is way funnier than the animated version in my opinion. The jam scene.
We have jams.
Jam?
Yes, jams.
I laugh every single time. He sells this movie from this point onward. The change into royal douche is also more subtle in a lot of ways, and more heartbreaking. Whereas animated Aladdin breaks his promise to the genie out of what seems like emotional desperation, live-action Al does it so casually it's hard to watch. He loses himself in a very real way that creeps up on you. Becoming Ali magnifies all the bro that was already there. And man, did I hate that guy. As I said before, this Aladdin is way more aware of how the world works. and is quite a bit more jaded than animated Aladdin. But I think that's necessary with a live-action adaptation. Had Masood played Aladdin with that same wide-eyed innocence, it would have been either cringy or vomit-inducing. We still fall in love with the character, but in less of a perfect Disney prince way, and more of a that really nice guy I met in real life who I have a major crush on way. 4 out of 5. He does lose a point for that weird start of the movie personality limbo thing. But let's be real. How can you not fall in love with a guy who can move like that? This was a tricky one for me. Aladdin absolutely grows as a character in this movie, but because he has more maturity at the beginning of the film, it's a very different growth. At the start of the movie, Aladdin is frustrated at his status in life, but he's okay with who he is as a person. There's an acceptance about who he is inside that animated Al just didn't have. This Aladdin is more focused on the class issue. He begins being proud of the fact that he's not that guy. But Jafar gets to him. Aladdin is seduced by how much easier things are when he gets a little status. And that's what changes him. Royal douche Aladdin is still Aladdin, just with all those bro-y personality traits amplified. Not to mention, he's able to justify these changes to himself, which is the most troubling part. However, when everything goes downhill, he's quick to see where he went wrong, and he comes to that realization himself before Jafar unmasks him. The ending is powerful in a new way because you see him relate to Jafar. He understands that if he hadn't have been stopped, he might have ended up that way, and that fact really changes him. Masood's face during the scene speaks volumes. The choice to have Aladdin leave the palace after he frees the genie also showcases how much he's changed. Almost more so than him freeing the genie in the first place. He's willing to leave, knowing he messed up and knowing that if he can't be a part of that world without changing himself, he can't be a part of it anymore. It's such a mature and heartbreaking decision. Even though we know he gets his happy ending, the fact that he was so willing to literally walk away from it for the happiness of the people he loved, it's impressive and truly shows the change that he went through. Next, we're talking about the Broadway musical. This is a bit trickier. When we look at the animated or live-action movies, they're fixed. They were created and released, and now anytime you watch them, you're watching the exact same movie every single time. Theater is alive. The show premiered in 2011 at the Fifth Avenue Theater in Seattle, Washington, and was heavily based on the Aladdin musical spectacular that was showing at the Hyperion Theater in California Adventure for years. As is common with most musicals, the Fifth Avenue Theater show was a testing ground of sorts, and massive changes were made before it reopened for its pre-Broadway tryout in Toronto in 2013, and then finally premiered on Broadway in 2014. Since then, the production has opened in London, Germany, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, the Netherlands, had a US national tour, and has been made into a junior version for schools and community theater groups. There have been 3 official original production casts and various cast replacements, so we're going to need to focus a little less on the actor's interpretation and more on the script for this one. Considering this is a Broadway musical, I would be disappointed if Aladdin weren't given the best of the best here. I'm not disappointed. What's great about Disney musicals is that they usually bring back songs that were cut from the original theatrical release of the animated film.
My initial agenda when we brought the show to Broadway was I really want to bring in the songs that Howard and I had written, and it didn't make it into the movie.
And so we finally get Proud of Your Boy. This song, as you may have noticed from how much I freaking love it, is absolutely beautiful. And it makes Aladdin really vulnerable, which helps us empathize with him. I honestly think it's a shame the song hasn't been incorporated into remakes of the animated film like they did with Human Again for Beauty and the Beast. It might be slower, but it's so good.
And Mom, those dreams that you had for me, I'll make sure that they happen, I guarantee. Mom.
Now we also get a new duet with Aladdin and Jasmine called A Million Miles Away for their meet cute. It's lighthearted and adds a new element to their growing romance. We get to see them relax and have fun around each other, something that we didn't really get in the other versions. It also digs a little deeper into what they have in common: the desire to get away from their current life, experience something new, and become who they really are.
After a million miles or so, we might feel like we're free.
Maybe we'll travel on the sea.
Aladdin also has 3 new friends, we'll get into that in a little bit, who he shares a few new songs with. Most notably in the song Babkak, Omar, Aladdin, Kasim, which is an upbeat little dance number that outlines their chill attitude towards life. Aladdin also has small parts in Somebody's Got Your Back and Diamond in the Rough. While many of the additional songs are purely there for entertainment, Proud of Your Boy and A Million Miles Away are great additions that really add something to the character. 5 out of 5, mainly for
Proud of your boy.
Yes, it's still called Aladdin. It's still about Aladdin. This version finally addresses a little more about Aladdin's past, and in particular, his deceased parents and his regret at not making more of himself for his late mother.
Proud of your.
It's refreshing to have Aladdin want to prove himself to someone other than Jasmine. It's a nice personal touch that brings a bit more gravitas to the character. The biggest story change is obviously the re-edition of his buddies Babkak, Omar, and Kasim. I say re-edition because these characters were in the original draft for the animated feature before being changed into Abu. They weren't in the Aladdin Spectacular at California Adventure, but were added in by the Seattle show. They are the comic relief of the show, and while I love them and find them super funny, I question how much they actually add. I get that there's supposed to be another layer of Aladdin betraying his friends to become Ali, and their imprisonment after they try to rescue Aladdin does push Al to make his wish to get them all free. But we kind of had the betrayal arc already with the genie, and having the genie save Aladdin is an important part of that character's arc, so getting rid of it seems odd. The 3 friends are a fairly stereotypical comedy trio. You got the food-obsessed one.
I've only been in love twice in my life. One of those times was with a flan.
The weakling romantic.
Weapons! Oh, jeez! Couldn't we just send a strongly worded letter?
Seriously?
And the arrogant tough guy.
Exciting! Performing like dancing monkeys for loose change? It's embarrassing! It's degrading!
You can sing lead.
It's showtime.
Their scenes are really funny, but I don't know how much they actually add to Aladdin. He still gets a 5 out of 5. In addition to the friends, there was a lot added to the story here. Okay, straight up, the ending of the musical is almost word for word the same as the animated film.
And no matter what anybody says, you'll always be a prince to me.
So it's safe to say he'll be getting a 5 out of 5 here. But what's lovely is how they added the reprise of Proud of Your Boy right after he tells the genie he can't wish him free. It's the moment of realization before Jafar's revelation that really highlights the growth of the character for me, much like the live-action version. I also appreciate that he realized he wasn't going to make his mother proud by being a prince and having status and power, but by being true to himself and a good person and a good friend. Another musical addition is that he gives his friends jobs in the palace, making sure he doesn't leave them behind after all they did for him. It's a small thing, but it shows that even though he's gone through a big change, he still knows who has his back. As I said before, 5 out of 5. Alright, we've looked at each version of Aladdin, and now it's time to tally all the scores and declare our winner. Animated Aladdin has a respectable lineup of scores, with 3 for songs, 5 for story, 5 for personality, and 5 for character development, giving him a total of 18 out of 20 possible points. Live Action Now scored 3 for songs, 5 for story, but ended a little less strong with 4s for both personality and character development, giving him a total of 16 out of 20 possible points. Finally, Broadway Al scored an impressive 5 in every category, giving him a perfect score of 20 out of 20. For those paying attention, that means that Broadway Al wins the Battle of the Aladdins. Animated Al comes in a close second with only 2 points under, and Live Action Al sits in 3rd place with 16 points. I don't think it's surprising that Broadway Aladdin wins this round. With Disney musicals, you sort of get the best of both worlds. You can still keep the exaggerated expression that made the animated film so fun, but you have more time to go deeper and explore the characters and plot. especially when you consider that as the main character, of course, Aladdin himself was going to be the focal point of any changes made. So that's it for today. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and hit the bell icon to be notified of upcoming Adaptation Showdowns. Next video will be the Battle of the Jasmines. So until next time.
Proud of